They set out into the wild for a fresh start. Only one returned in a body bag. Years later, whispers from the forest suggest she might still be alive. But the truth waiting in the trees is far darker than anyone imagined. Want it more emotional, suspenseful, or romantic? Instagram photo was posted on a Saturday morning, just before sunrise. Jake stood tall, grinning with his arm wrapped around Natalie's shoulders, while Natalie, smiling but tight-lipped, held up her fingers in a peace sign. Behind them was the endless sweep of Alaska's Wrangell St. Elias Mountains, still dark with dawn mist. The caption read, "Disconnecting for a week. No signal, just stars, love, and survival." It was their last known public trace. To the outside world, Natalie and Jake were the perfect couple. They'd met in college, bonded over backpacking trips and coffee-fueled road journals. Jake was the adventurous one, always chasing the next thrill, camera in hand. Natalie was softer, more reserved, always writing, always watching. They'd moved in together 2 years earlier, and though Natalie never quite settled into Jake's need for constant movement, she tried, for him, for the idea of love. But by the time they boarded the puddle jumper plane to McCarthy, something had shifted. Neither said it out loud, but both felt it. The silences between them had grown too long. Conversations that once ended in laughter now ended with shrugs or quiet exits. Still, they went. They were never supposed to go. The plan was a 7-day. Through remote terrain, off trail routes, glacier ridges, dense pine forests. Jake had mapped it all obsessively. Natalie had hesitated, but agreed after a night of argument. No cell service, no checkpoints, no second chances, for days. After the photo, they missed their check-in at the base lodge. Owner, an older woman named Ruthie, reported it. Rangers dispatched a small team. The trailhead showed faint boot prints, but no sign of struggle. It had rained. Most evidence, if any, was washed away. The search lasted 10 days. Helicopters scanned deep valleys and mountain passes. Dogs were brought in. Nothing. No footprints, no campsite, no bodies. Just empty space. The conclusion was quick and bitter, lost to the wild. Either they fell into a crevasse or were swept away by meltwater. Alaska had claimed them like it had so many others. Friends back home posted tributes. They died doing what they loved. Nature took them peacefully. But Claire, Natalie's older sister, wasn't buying it. She knew Natalie. Natalie wouldn't have gone willingly. Something felt off. Then came the voicemail. 3 days after the initial search was called off, Natalie's friend Tori received a delayed voicemail, marked sent at 3:47 a.m. the night before they vanished. It was just 5 seconds long. Heavy breathing, a faint whisper, "We're not alone." Then static. Authorities dismissed it as poor reception. But Claire pressed harder. She started retracing their digital trail, flight receipts, last purchases, text messages. What she found were tiny cracks in the perfect couple's story. A canceled therapy appointment. Natalie searching emergency shelter Alaska. Jake leading messages from someone named Dale. Claire didn't know who Dale was. Yet, weeks turned into months. With no bodies, the couple were declared presumed dead. But that didn't stop rumors from spreading. Locals whispered about a recluse living near the old trail. Hikers spoke of strange echoes in the woods, and Claire kept digging. She played the voicemail again and again. It haunted her. The voice didn't sound like Natalie. It sounded like someone trying not to be heard. She printed out the Instagram photo and pinned it above her desk. Natalie's smile wasn't just tight, it scared. Claire hadn't seen it at the time, but now it screamed at her. She circled the caption, "No signal. Just stars, love, and survival." But someone didn't survive, and love wasn't enough. 10 months later, a search dog barked at a patch of moss deep in the wilderness. The ranger following him paused, eyes narrowing. Something glinted beneath the soil. Canvas, torn fabric, maybe metal. Wind howled over the ridge as he knelt down. He was about to uncover the first real piece of the truth. The canvas was buried beneath a shallow mound of leaves and rot. It took Ranger Eli Hill a few minutes of digging before the edge of a weatherproof hiking backpack emerged, dripped open at the seam. Inside, waterlogged scraps, a tattered map, a melted protein bar, a scratched metal compass. Then something more delicate, a soaked, spiral-bound journal. Name Natalie Reyes was inked inside the cover. The discovery would later serve as the key to understanding the couple's final days. But the story it told didn't begin with fear, it began with hesitation. 10 months earlier, on a chilly June morning, Natalie had sat on a flat rock just off the trailhead, adjusting the straps of her pack while Jake filmed a panoramic shot of the valley. He was grinning again, that familiar adrenaline smile she used to love. Her fingers trembled. The ranger who'd met them at the McCarthy station the day before had warned them plainly. Storms coming in from the northwest. You'd sure you want to head into the back country this week. Jake hadn't even paused. We've hiked storms before. We'll be fine. Natalie had nodded, but inside her chest, something twisted. The ranger, older and weather-beaten, had frowned. There's a reason folks don't go deep this early in the season. Rivers are high. Trails aren't stable. You get caught out there. We can't come looking right away. Jake offered a tight smile. We'll be careful. They weren't. Natalie's journal entries from the first 2 days are light, almost cheerful. Descriptions of wildflowers. Jake's obsession with drone shots. Her sketch of a fox print in the mud. But on the 3rd page, the tone shifted. He's acting strange today. Keeps checking his phone even though we have no signal. Keeps glancing behind us like he's expecting someone. I asked if everything's okay. He snapped at me. Just tired, he said, but it felt like more. That same night, Jake left a voicemail using the lodge's emergency satellite phone. The message wasn't meant for Natalie. It was meant for someone else. Don't follow us up here. I told you I'd take care of it. She can't know. The voice was clipped, barely above a whisper. It cut off after 10 seconds. The storm rolled into days later. According to weather logs, it arrived faster and fiercer than forecasted. Rain, hail, near-freezing winds. Whiteout conditions made helicopter surveillance impossible. Rangers noted that any path the couple may have taken would have been erased by flash flooding and landslides. Even the usual river crossings would have become deadly. Natalie's journal zoomed with writing now shaky, slanted. We lost the trail. Jake swears he knows the direction, but I don't believe him. We haven't seen another person in days. He says we'll set up camp near a rock outcrop he found years ago. But I don't think he's looking for shelter. I think he's hiding something. The last written line, almost as smeared to read. Last night he stood over me while I was pretending to sleep. He had something in his hand. When the search began days later, the storm had already passed. The air was eerily calm. Rangers followed standard procedure grid patterns, callouts, thermal sweeps, but there were no tracks, no campsite, no signal flare. It was as if the couple had evaporated into the wilderness. What Claire found most disturbing, though, wasn't what was found, it was what wasn't. Jake's voicemail had never been linked to a known number. Ranger who issued the warning at McCarthy. There was no record of him ever being scheduled that week. And Natalie's journal. The last few pages had been deliberately torn out. Ranger Hill zipped the journal into a dry evidence bag, his pulse quickening. He'd hiked this terrain for over a decade. He'd never seen storms erase people, only hide them. He stood, scanning the ridge. Somewhere out here, the truth was buried, and someone wanted it to stay that way. Claire stood in her kitchen, hands wrapped around a chipped mug, the storm clouds outside mirroring her thoughts. 10 months since her sister disappeared. 10 months of unanswered calls, hollow condolences, and the same rehearsed explanations from officials. The weather turned. Trail was dangerous. We did all we could. No one had done enough. The call from Ranger Hill had brought it all back. Torn journal, the backpack, the glint of something more beneath the surface. Claire hadn't cried. She hadn't said a word. She simply opened her laptop, pulled out the manila folder marked Natalie, and began again. She had never believed. It was an accident. Even before the trip, Natalie had seemed dimmed. During their last video call, her smile flickered like a bad connection. She'd said everything was fine, but Claire had noticed the bruises on her wrist, the way she kept glancing off screen, like someone was listening. Claire had replayed that call too many times to count. Jake had always rubbed her the wrong way. Charming, too eager to be liked. He had a way of flipping things, turning arguments into apologies, making Natalie feel like the bad guy. At Thanksgiving, Claire had found her sister crying in the bathroom. Natalie had waved it off. Just tired, she whispered. But now, that memory felt like a scream no one had heard. Claire dug deeper. She started with Natalie's phone records, obtained under the radar through a friend who worked for a wireless provider. Most of it was normal calls to Claire, old friends, co-workers. But one number kept appearing in the weeks before the trip. Seth. Claire didn't know a Seth. She found him on Natalie's contacts list with no last name. Just a single heart emoji beside his name. His number had been deleted the day before the hike. She hesitated, then called. He answered on the third ring. Quiet, surprised. Claire. His voice cracked. They met the next day in a park near Anchorage. Seth was in his early 30s, with tired eyes and a nervous way of gripping his sleeves. He and Natalie had met at a local writing workshop a year ago. It started as friendship. Long walks, shared notebooks, coffee. But then Natalie began confiding in him. She was scared of Jake. Seth said softly. She said he'd never hit her but that he didn't need to. He controlled everything, where she went, who she saw, even what she wore. Claire listened in silence as he described how Natalie would call him late at night, voice shaking. Terrified Jake would read her messages. She told Seth about Alaska, how she didn't want to go, how Jake insisted, how she tried to cancel and he threatened to leave her, said she was ungrateful, that she owed him. She told me, if I disappear. There, it wasn't the weather. Claire's hands clenched. Back home, she opened Natalie's journals again. Between the sketches and trail notes, she found a tucked-away envelope, never mailed. It was addressed to Claire. Inside was a single sheet of paper. If anything happens, don't let them say I slipped. I didn't. I saw it coming, and I'm sorry. The handwriting was shaky. Claire sat back in her chair, pulse pounding. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a setup. Someone wanted Natalie isolated. Someone wanted her silenced. Someone had succeeded. Until now. Because 10 months later, a ranger had found the first thread. And Claire, the woman who wouldn't let go, was ready to pull it. The forest was silent, save for the rhythmic crunch of boots over damp moss, the soft snorting of the dog weaving through the trees. Ranger Eli Hill adjusted his pack, eyes scanning the ridge line as his German Shepherd, Scout, darted ahead. Late spring melt had exposed parts of the terrain long buried beneath snow. Most years, Eli came out alone to check old game trails, just routine work. But this year felt different. He'd read the report. Young couple vanished, presumed dead. Bad storm, no bodies. Typical in these woods, but something about it had stuck. Maybe it was the look on Claire Reyes's face when she visited the ranger station 2 weeks ago. Desperate, but clear-eyed. They missed something, she had said. Please go back. He hid her somewhere. Scout barked sharply, tail stiff. Eli picked up his pace, ducking under low-hanging pine branches until he found the dog standing over something. A hiking boot, torn, water-stained, but unmistakably modern. The sole had a half-melted sticker barely legible, but he caught the word Ridgeline. That was brand Claire mentioned her sister had worn. 10 feet away, half buried beneath dirt and pine needles. Scout began pawing furiously. Eli knelt. What emerged was worse than gear. A shredded, faded backpack with slashes down the side, as if torn by something jagged or something deliberate. He slid on gloves and opened it carefully. Inside were unwrapped protein bars, a rusted K-cane, and a journal. Natalie's, still damp from snowmelt. It was already too much, but Scout wasn't done. The dog circled a clump of moss and bark, sniffed hard, then sat with a sharp, trained whine. Eli approached slowly, wrapped in a gray-blue rain jacket, balled tightly, tied with shoelaces. Was camcorder. Ellie's breath caught, the kind backpackers used before phones could do it all. Screen was cracked, battery corroded, but still intact. A heavy weight settled in his chest. Not far from where he stood, the earth dipped into a shallow hollow. A partial rock slide had covered what appeared to be the remains of a campfire long. There were scorch marks, scorched cloth, and something that looked like bone, too small to confirm on sight. Eli stepped back, heart thudding. Radioed it in. This is Hill. I've got potential evidence connected to the Reyes case. Coordinates coming. Send backup. That night, back at the Ranger outpost, he sat alone in the evidence room, watching technicians work on drying the pages and salvaging the camera. One of them cracked the camcorder open, cleaned the connections, and hooked it to a laptop. The screen blinked to life. Low battery. One video file found. Eli leaned forward as the file opened. The first frame showed Natalie, face pale, lips chapped, whispering to the lens, "If you're watching this, something's gone wrong." Behind her, only darkness. Wind screamed outside the tent. "I think he knows I want to leave. He says no one's looking for us. He says he'll fix it. I don't know what that means anymore." Then a sudden shift. The camera dropped, hitting the tent floor. A shadow crossed the lens. A voice, low and sharp, "Are you recording again?" The screen cut to black. Eli sat frozen. He replayed it. Again, somewhere out there. The rest of the truth waited. And the camcorder had only scratched the surface. The room was dim, save for the pale glow of the monitor. Low hum buzzed from the old external hard drive attached to the forensic laptop. Ranger Eli Hill leaned against the wall, arms crossed tightly across his chest. Beside him sat Investigator Dana Price from the Alaska Bureau of Investigation. Jaw set, eyes locked on the screen. They watched in silence. The salvaged camcorder footage began. A shaky frame of pine trees. Natalie's voice breathing hard. The camera spun wildly, then steadied. "Day 5, she whispered. Her face filled the screen, drawn, pale, eyes darting. "Jake hasn't slept in 2 nights. He says we're close to the ridge, but we're going in circles. I tried to mark a tree. He saw me and threw it away." She blinked fast. Her lips trembled. "He keeps saying someone's following us, but I think it's him." Cut. The screen returned with Natalie in the tent, wind howling. Outside, he crouched near the zipped entrance, whispering again. I woke up, and he was standing over me, just watching. He said I was dreaming, but I wasn't asleep. A muffled crash outside the tent startled her. She lunged forward, fumbling with lens, then blacked out. Dana pressed pause. "Go back, right there." Eli rewound 10 seconds. They leaned in. Just before the blackout, a shape passed across the canvas of the tent. Not an animal. Figure too tall, too fast. The next clip opened to daylight. Jake, unshaven, eyes glassy, standing too close to the lens. His breathing was ragged, voice unfamiliar. "She's gone. Took the map, the food. Don't know why she'd do that." His hands shook. He turned the camera on himself again. "She's scared of me. Get that now. But I was just trying to fix it. I was just trying to make her stay." Then he began to cry. It didn't sound like guilt. It sounded like desperation. Cut. Then came the longest clip, 6 minutes. The camera was propped against something, half tilted. A slope of pine needles in the frame, and heavy footfalls. Natalie was running. She appeared from the right, arms pumping, mouth open in a silent scream. Behind her, seconds later, Jake, stumbling, yelling something unintelligible. His hand held something metallic, maybe a flashlight, maybe something worse. He tripped. The camera tumbled with a thud, falling face up toward the gray sky. A moment later, Natalie's face came into view, close, frantic. She grabbed the camcorder. "If someone finds this," she gasped. A figure grabbed her from behind. The image shook violently. Natalie screamed, then black. The room was still. Dana leaned back in her chair. "Jesus," Eli exhaled, slow and ragged. "So she ran. She tried to escape." Dana nodded. "And he chased her. But it doesn't prove what happened next. There's no body, no murder weapon, not even a location." But he was unraveling. Eli said quietly. He knew she wanted to leave. Maybe that's what made him snap. They sat for a long time. Silence between them echoed the final stillness of the recording. Later that day, Claire was called in to view selected portions of the footage. She refused at first, then agreed, on the condition she watched alone. When she emerged from the viewing room, she said nothing. Her face was unreadable, but something had hardened in her eyes. Something new. Conviction. She turned to Dana. "There's someone else," she said. Dana raised an eyebrow. "You mean Jake?" Claire shook her head. "No. Natalie told me once, months before the trip, that Jake was afraid of someone. But a man had shown up outside their apartment, and Jake told her not to answer the door. She paused. She called him Dale. Dana frowned. There's no Dale in any of the files. Claire looked toward the forest through the window. Then, looking in the wrong places. That night, the forensics team reviewed GPS data embedded in the camcorder's final clip. The coordinates didn't match their projected trail. They were miles off route. And the closest known landmark, an abandoned ranger's cabin decommissioned decades ago, unmapped, unmentioned. Until now. Claire sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by a sea of paper. Printouts of Natalie's texts, archived emails, screenshots of call logs. The camcorder footage had cracked something open inside her, not just grief, but purpose and rage. She combed through every digital breadcrumb her sister had left behind. Patterns began to emerge. One number appeared over and over again in Natalie's final months, especially late at night. Sometimes just a single call, other times long back and forth texts. It wasn't just friendship, it was need. The name was saved in Natalie's phone as Seth. Claire's hands trembled as she clicked through the recovered emails. Most had been deleted, buried deep in a secondary inbox. What remained told a quiet, devastating story. I can't take much more. He keeps saying I owe him everything. I'm scared of what will happen if I leave. And then, weeks before the trip, after Alaska, I'm done. I'll come home. You'll help me start over, right? Claire blinked at the screen. This wasn't random. Natalie had a plan. He was going to walk away. And Jake he'd found out. The emails stopped 2 days before the couple left for their hike. Claire didn't hesitate. She messaged Seth and asked to meet again. He agreed. This time, they met inside a quiet library near Anchorage, tucked away in a side room far from curious ears. Seth looked thinner, his skin pale like someone who hadn't slept well in months. But his voice was steady. I loved her, he said simply. Claire nodded. I know. She loved you too. Seth swallowed. She wanted to leave. She told me Alaska was her last chance to try and prove things to Jake. But if it didn't work, she was walking. Coming back to me. Claire leaned in. Did Jake know about you? A long pause. Then I think so. He started showing up at Natalie's job. Unexpectedly, checking her phone. She stopped texting me, started emailing from her work computer. She said she didn't want him to get suspicious. He pulled something from his coat pocket, a folded piece of paper. Claire opened it carefully. It was a printed email Natalie had sent him, dated 2 days before the hike. He found the journal. He didn't say anything, just looked at me like I was a stranger. I told him I was tired of pretending. He said, then don't bother coming back. Claire stared at the words. Seth spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. I think he planned something. I think he brought her up there to get rid of her, or scare her into staying. Claire didn't want to believe it, but the camera footage, the ripped journal, the missing map, it all pointed in the same direction. Jake knew, Seth repeated, and he wasn't going to let her go. Claire sat back, mind spinning. It wasn't just a toxic relationship, it was a psychological cage. Natalie had tried to escape, but the trap was already set. What disturbed her most was this. Natalie saw it coming, and still, she'd gone. Claire closed her eyes. She could feel the walls tightening. The deeper she dug, the more this stopped being about just Jake, because there was one name Natalie had never explained. Dale, the man who appeared suddenly, the one Jake had feared, the one Natalie mentioned. Seth just once in a deleted voicemail Claire had partially recovered. He followed Jake once. I think he's watching us. Jake won't talk about it. Claire turned to Seth. Do you know where they were heading exactly? Seth nodded slowly. She said Jake wanted to camp near an old ranger's cabin, a place no one goes anymore. Claire's blood ran cold. It was the same place where the GPS coordinates from the camcorder had led investigators just days ago. The cabin no one talked about. The map on Ranger Eli Hill's desk looked like a spiderweb of secrets, most of them buried beneath years of snow, silence, and time. He had been combing through old ranger logs stored in the back of the Forest Service archives. Pages yellowed and ink faded. Most entries were mundane: elk sightings, avalanche warnings, maintenance notes. But one entry dated July 1984 stopped him cold. Do not direct hikers toward Horseshoe Crags. Unstable terrain. Old structure collapsed nearby. Not unofficial. Trail. Dangerous, best left alone. Hill frowned. Structure. He flipped to the following page. Faint pencil. A different hand had scribbled a note. Cabin still standing when we found it. Someone's been using it. Fresh ash. Footprints. Weird carvings on the wall. Not reported. Not safe. No coordinates. No follow-up. It had become ghost in the system, an unofficial landmark erased by time and willful forgetting. But now Claire's words echoed in Hill's mind. Jake wanted to camp near an old ranger's cabin. Place no one goes anymore. He alerted Search Command. Within 24 hours, a drone was dispatched to scan the Horseshoe Crags region. Rugged, remote, often overlooked due to seasonal ROCKFALL. Then there it was. Crumbled roof. Weather-beaten timbers. Beneath an overhang, nearly invisible unless viewed from above. Hill and a team of forensics hiked in the next morning. The approach was grueling. No trails. Just jagged stone and dense pine. As they rounded the final ridge, the wind shifted, carrying with it the bitter smell of decay and damp earth. The cabin leaned like a wounded animal, half consumed by moss and shadow. Its door hung askew. Rusted hinges groaned as Hill pushed. Open. The inside was worse. A torn sleeping bag. Blackened fire pit. Near the back wall, shredded fabric, tangled in dried blood. It was unmistakably human. The fragments were faded now, but the pattern on one of the sleeves matched a raincoat Natalie had worn in a social media photo just weeks before the hike. Near corner, something caught Hill's eye, a carving in the wood paneling. N plus Natalie and Seth. Hill stepped back, breath caught in his throat. What had happened here? Just beneath a loose floorboard, a forensic technician uncovered something. Wrapped in waxed canvas, a folding knife. Rusted, but sharp enough to cut. Swabs were taken. Prints lifted. The team hiked out in silence. 3 days later, the DNA results came back. Jake's blood was on the knife handle. So was Natalie's. Claire sat in stunned silence as Hill delivered the results. We don't know what the sequence was, but it's clear there was a struggle. She leaned forward. So this wasn't just an accident. It wasn't a fall. Hill hesitated. We're starting to think Natalie may have fought back. Claire's throat tightened. Part of her felt pride. The other part grief so deep it felt like drowning. But something still didn't add up. Where's her body? She asked. Hill looked away. We searched around the cabin, 50 yards in every direction. Nothing. No remains, no trail. It's like she vanished again. Claire's mind raced back to the voicemail, Natalie mentioning someone named Dale. The man Jake feared. One Natalie said was watching them. What if Dale hadn't just been watching? What if he'd taken Natalie after the fight? The thought chilled her. Because if Dale existed, he was still out there. And he might be the only one who knew the full truth. The whisper started with a photograph. A hunter named Travis Keene came forward, hesitant, clutching a worn manila envelope like it might burn him. He'd been tracking elk northwest of Horseshoe Crags when he saw something, or someone that didn't belong. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance, but the figure in the center was sharp enough to raise alarms. A gaunt man, wrapped in camouflage scraps and furs, crouched beside a fire. Long gray beard, unkempt hair. Something feral in the way he clutched his rifle. Behind him stood a makeshift lean-to, barely visible against the thick timberline. That was 3 days after your sister disappeared, Ranger Eli Hill told Claire, sliding the photo across the table. About 9 miles from the cabin we found. Claire stared at the image, her skin prickling. Who is he? Hill sighed. We think it's Dale Whitcomb. Locals call him the Ghost. Claire blinked. The man Natalie mentioned. Hill nodded. Former Vietnam vet. Lived out here since the 80s. Vanished after a cabin fire in '96. Officials wrote him off as deceased. But some hikers still report strange encounters, smoke rising in the wrong valley. Traps no animal could have set. Gear going missing. Claire's voice wavered. And now you think he's alive? Hill leaned back. We don't just think it. We're almost certain. More stories poured in once the photo hit local media. A pair of backpackers described a mute man in rags watching them from the tree line. A fire crew had discovered tools that didn't match any issued equipment, homemade, old, but sharp as hell, and one hunter, 15 years ago, swore. He woke up in his tent to see someone standing silently at the edge of his camp, just watching. They all described the same eyes, unblinking, pale blue, haunted. Hill motioned to a map on the wall. Every sighting forms a rough triangle, Natalie. Jake's trail sits right at the center. Claire's breath caught. Are you saying Dale took her? Hill paused. I'm saying it's possible she didn't die in that cabin, and if Dale found her injured, terrified, he might have taken her in, or taken her, somewhere. Claire's stomach churned. A hermit, a recluse, a soldier used to surviving alone. Someone who lived off the land, off the grid, away from judgment or law. What would a man like that do if he stumbled upon a wounded woman, hiding from someone like Jake? More chilling was the possibility Claire couldn't say out loud. What if Natalie never got the chance to ask for help? What if Dale had been watching them from the start? Hill broke the silence. We're launching a focused search, ground teams, drones, thermal imaging. But if Dale's still out there, he knows these woods better than we ever will. Claire leaned over the map, eyes narrowing. Then we'll need to think like him. Hill nodded slowly. Just one warning, he said. If Dale is still alive, and if he's hiding something, he won't give it up quietly. As Claire stared at the image again, a question echoed in her mind like a pulse. Was Natalie alive, and trapped with someone even worse? The call came. Just after sunrise, Ranger Eli Hill stood at the edge of a rockslide basin, the early light catching on fractured stone and broken branches. A forensics team had been sweeping the area near the ridge, where old reports once hinted at unnatural movement in the soil. What they found went far beyond that. Bones, partial, scattered, buried just enough to stay hidden for nearly a year. Claire stood a few feet back, arms wrapped around herself despite the warmth. Her breath hitched as she saw the faded hiking boot being placed into a yellow evidence bag. Is it? She asked. Hill nodded grimly. We're waiting on confirmation, but the dental records line up. It's Jake. Claire swallowed hard. It should have felt like relief. It didn't. Not yet. Dr. Lang, the forensic anthropologist, crouched near the excavation site. Cause of death isn't what we expected, she said. Claire looked up sharply. What do you mean? Lang held up a gloved hand. Fractures. Just postmortem damage likely from the slide. But there's a clean knife wound to the abdomen. Deep, precise. That's what killed him. Claire blinked. Someone stabbed him. Lang nodded. Hill exhaled slowly. He didn't die in the slide. He died before it. That changed everything. A sudden shift in the air seemed to settle over them all. Jake hadn't fallen. He hadn't gotten lost. He'd been killed, and someone had tried to cover it up poorly. But then came something even more baffling. There's a second set of prints, said Officer Marley, a young K-9 handler who'd been combing the surrounding trail. He pointed to a softer patch of earth just behind a collapsed tree. Claire and Hill followed her over. The prints were faint, but distinct, smaller than Jake's. Closer together. The stride was cautious, uneven, and newer. These aren't from last year, Marley added. They're recent, week-old, maybe. Claire's heart pounded. They're heading away from the site, Hill murmured, crouching down. Whoever it was, they were here after Jake died. Claire stared at the prints, her mind racing. One thought pressed through louder than the rest. Natalie. Could she have survived the encounter with Jake? Stabbed him in self-defense, fled, and returned. The possibility felt too fragile to name. But then why hadn't she come home? Hill stood slowly. The prints veer north, toward the tree line. Claire stepped forward instinctively. I wanted to follow them. Hill shook his head. Too dangerous without backup. Let me get a team out there. No, Claire said, firmer now. She's my sister. She's alive. I need to know what happened. And I don't trust time to be on our side. Hill hesitated. We'll go together. But we moved carefully as the crew began securing the site. The wind picked up, rustling through the pines. Above, the air felt heavier now, as if the forest itself had secrets still coiled in its roots. Claire knelt beside Jake's half-buried remains one last time. She didn't speak, didn't curse him. She just stared. You thought you'd win. She might have fought back, then she turned, her boots crunching over moss and gravel as she followed the path. The smaller footprints had carved through the underbrush. Each step forward wasn't just a pursuit, it was a reclamation of truth. Somewhere ahead, someone was still running, and Claire was ready to follow. The forest had gone quiet. Claire and Ranger Hill followed the faint trail of prints deeper into the woods. The air grew cooler as the canopy thickened, sunlight breaking through only in fractured ribbons. Each step away from the rockslide site felt like peeling back a layer of time and secrets. 2 hours in, they found it. A rusted metal box wedged inside the hollow of a split pine tree. Wrapped in a tattered cloth and sealed with duct tape, Claire pried it open with trembling hands. Inside, a waterproof camcorder case, and tucked beneath it, sealed in a plastic sandwich bag, was a folded sheet of paper creased, smudged, and signed in Natalie's handwriting. Claire's breath caught as she slid it out. Hill gave her space. She sat on a moss-covered rock and unfolded the letter. Claire, if you're reading this, it means you kept searching. Thank you for not giving up on me. I hope you're safe. I hope I didn't ruin everything. Jake wasn't the man I thought he was. I know that sounds cliché, but the change in him wasn't gradual, it was like a switch flipped out there. He started talking to the trees, accusing me of things I never did. And then he found Seth's name in my journal. I tried to explain. He didn't want explanations, just control. I ran, I hid, and I watched him scream my name into the dark for hours. Then, on the third night, he found the cabin. I had been staying there quiet, scared, alone. He pounded on the door until splintered. He said I betrayed him. If he couldn't have me, no one would. I didn't plan it, I swear, but I had the knife. I kept it under the mattress. I just wanted to scare him. Claire's eyes blurred. He lunged, and I reacted. It all happened so fast, I didn't even know where I hit him until he staggered back. He bled so much, Claire. He collapsed in the doorway. Thought he was dead. I panicked. I ran. Then the storm came, and the rock slide. I never went back. I didn't know what to do. I buried the letter, the footage, everything, and I kept walking, north. Mostly, I thought about turning myself in. I knew no one would believe me. I had to do it. I had to survive. I hope someday you understand. Claire pressed the letter to her chest, swallowing the sob that rose in her throat. She couldn't imagine the fear Natalie had felt, alone in those woods with guilt clawing at her from the inside out. Hill gently tapped the case. We'll get the footage developed. Maybe it fills in more of what happened. Claire nodded, fingers brushing the hard plastic. Back at the ranger station, they worked carefully to power the camcorder and transfer the files. Most of it was shaky, dim. Natalie talking to herself, whispering updates like a survival journal. Her voice cracked, her face drawn with exhaustion. But near the end, one clip stood out. Natalie sat in the cabin, her eyes swollen from crying. She stared directly into the lens. I don't know if anyone will find this. I don't know if I deserve to be found. But I didn't want to die here without someone knowing the truth. Then she paused. He wasn't the first person to scare. Hey, just the last. The screen went black. Claire sat in stunned silence, holding the device like it was a piece of her sister's soul. Hill looked over. We know what happened now, but we still don't know where she went. Claire's jaw tightened. Then we keep going. She's out there. I feel it. As night fell, a ranger burst in breathless, holding a weathered trail map found in the lower quadrant of the park. Ma'am, he said, you're going to want to see this. The trail map was hand-drawn, brittle with age, marked in red pencil. It referenced an old Firewatch route long since decommissioned. But in the bottom corner, barely legible, was a name, Willows Hollow, Claire. Traced the line with her finger. That's 10 miles from where Jake's body was found. Ranger Hill leaned over her shoulder. 10 miles from where she might have gone after the rock slide. They set out at dawn. A drone deployed to scout the dense canopy ahead. Wind rustled the treetops like whispers brushing against the ears of the forest. The deeper they trekked, the less the land looked touched by man, just endless green, thick roots, and the occasional deer print in soft earth. Then came the call. Over here. A ranger shouted from the northern ridge. Claire and Hill scrambled up, boots kicking loose gravel. The ranger pointed toward a crooked pine tree leaning out over a cliff edge. Wedged between the bark and a protruding limb was a delicate silver pendant, its chain snapped, the charm hanging by a thread. Claire's heart leapt. She didn't need to check twice. That's Natalie's. I gave it to her when she turned 17. Before anyone could speak further, a rustle echoed through the trees. Across the ravine, a figure, thin, slow-moving, emerged from the thicket. Tattered clothes, long, matted hair, arms wrapped around their chest like they were holding themselves together. Claire's breath hitched. Natalie. The figure froze, as if hearing her voice from that distance. But before they could call again, the figure bolted, vanishing behind trees like a ghost swallowed by green. Teams descended both sides of the ravine. They searched for hours, the forest thick and unyielding. Just when hope began to wane, one ranger spotted something. Footprints, small, bare. They followed the prints downhill, toward a bend in the river. Prints danced erratically, like someone unsure where they were going or if they were being followed. Claire knelt beside them. The impressions were fresh, the toes dug deep into the soil. Whoever made them had been running, or scared. Rain. Clouds loomed overhead, and daylight dimmed. We're not alone out here, Hill murmured. That night, the forest came alive with searchlights and quiet footsteps. Rangers combed every crevice near the riverbank. A motion sensor camera was placed where the prints ended, and across the dark water. A small fire flickered briefly, then was gone. The next morning, footage from the camera revealed a fleeting shape passing just outside the frame, a silhouette with a familiar gait, a limp in one leg, clutching something to their chest. The video was timestamped 3:17 a.m. Claire stared at the screen in disbelief. Her voice was a whisper. I know it's her. The discovery of the pendant, the footage, and the mysterious figure. The local authorities officially reopened the case. National news picked it up within hours. Phones rang off the hook. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. If Natalie was alive, why hadn't she come home? As teams prepared for a grid search of the area known as Willows Hollow, Claire stood at the river's edge, eyes scanning the trees across the water. Natalie, she whispered into the breeze, we're so close. Far above, perched quietly in a pine, a camouflage trail camera blinked red, recording. The wind was colder than Claire remembered. She zipped her parka higher and stepped out of the ranger truck. The river trail had changed since she was last here. Snowmelt made the soil unstable, and the scent of pine mingled with something faintly metallic like rust or memory. Hill stood beside her in silence. His presence had become grounding these past few weeks, more than just a ranger, an anchor in a sea of loss and blurred hope. They reached the overlook where Natalie's pendant had been found, caught in tree bark. Claire dropped her pack from. She pulled out a small solar lantern and a round mirror, both wrapped in cloth. She climbed a low pine limb and carefully fastened the mirror high enough to catch the setting sun. The lantern she positioned at its base, angled to reflect upward at nightfall. What if she sees it? She asked quietly. Hill didn't respond right away. Then she'll know someone's still looking. Claire nodded, eyes fixed on the tree line across the ravine. She always loved light, even as a kid. Said she didn't like shadows because things hid in them. They stayed until the sun began to dip. Far above, a helicopter circled, its camera zoomed, scanning the forest for movement, anything reflective. Claire's breath hung in the air. She squeezed her hands together to stop them from shaking. Part of her felt foolish leaving lights in the wilderness, like some kind of beacon. Another part, the deeper, aching part, believed it was the only thing that still made sense. Suddenly, a flicker on the monitor in the ranger's mobile command van. The screen captured a sudden gleam of light southwest of their position. Not a flicker from the mirror Claire had placed. This reflection was farther off. It moved. Zoom in. Hill said that the feed narrowed, focusing on a slope beyond the river. There. For barely 3 seconds, a glint caught the sun, a flash, like someone turning a shiny surface or perhaps signaling, and then it was gone. Could be anything. One ranger said, could be her. Claire countered. Within the hour, a team of 6 hiked toward the coordinates. They moved carefully, the terrain steep, the air thinner. Claire watched from a distance, eyes never leaving the screen. Each minute crawled. Every snap of a twig through the team's body cams made her heart jump. Then, "We've got impressions." Someone radioed. Fresh ones, smaller foot size. Claire grabbed the nearest headset. "Do they lead anywhere?" A pause, then, "Downhill, toward the ridge. We're following." Camera footage grew more frantic. Brush, shadows, angled sunlight blinding the lens at times. But the trail continued. A scarf was found caught in bramble, faded, blue and floral. Claire recognized it instantly. Natalie single quotes S. Her voice cracked. "Keep going. Please, keep going." Back at the overlook, the mirror Claire had tied began to sway gently in the breeze, casting flashes of light in irregular beats almost like Morse code. Though no one noticed it then, the sun slipped below the horizon. Shadows stretched long over the ridge. On the screen, the team's lead ranger slowed. There, what is that? The final image, a glint again, this time from deep in the trees, to narrow flashes. A shadow, humanoid, barely visible. Then the screen faded to black. No conclusion. No final word. Just silence. Claire exhaled, her face a mixture of hope and terror. Somewhere in that vast Alaskan wilderness, her daughter may still be alive. And the stars emerged above. The mirror in the tree flashed once more. A signal, a warning, or a farewell. Whatever it meant, one truth had become undeniable. Natalie was still out there.